Today on The Big Story, drama at Hong Kong's Legislative Council as Chief Executive Carrie Lam tries to make her much-anticipated State of the Union address. 4 men have been arrested over SG Nasi Lemak, a chat group that circulated obscene pictures of women in Singapore. And finally, you've heard of ride-sharing, workspace sharing, but how about home sharing? Find out what that's about. Good evening and welcome to The Big Story, where we discuss the hottest topics of the day. I'm Dylan, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. Now, Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam was all set to make her third policy address today in the Legislative Council, but she was cut short twice by heckling pro-democracy lawmakers. Now, as a result of being unable to make her State of the Union address, she had to resort to making it via a video feed. In her speech, the embattled leader called on the people of Hong Kong to end their pessimism and rebuild the city with a can-do spirit. Now, joining us live from Hong Kong is Straits Times correspondent Claire Huang. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Dylan.
Hey, Claire. So now, SCMP said prior to the address that it was going to be a make or break speech for Mrs. Lam. Now, tell us a bit about how, did she manage to seize the occasion to save the city?
Okay, first of all, I think this is an important speech, clearly, because the protests have been going on for about 4 months, 4.5 months, 19 weeks. And so she needs to inspire people and perhaps change the course of events, but that ship has sailed. So that make or break point was weeks ago. So I think everybody has low expectations. They have expectations. They're hoping, and they have low expectations of Mrs. Carrie Lam's policy address. And as such, knowing more or less her track record, which is, despite having a reputation as someone capable as a civil servant, she's not quite a leader. So it's never been a make or break speech. Saving Hong Kong from the unrest that stems from a political crisis and the inaction of a government that has shown inability to lead requires huge concessions that Mrs. Lam has said she will not accept or will not carry out. We have been told at her press conference earlier that any solution to the social unrest cannot deviate from the very principles that keeps Hong Kong going, which are the adherence to one country, two systems principle and the rule of law, as well as the sanctity of Hong Kong's institutions. So as far as she is concerned, many of the protesters' demands, such as amnesty for those arrested, dropping the charges, are something she cannot consider. Right.
Now, Claire, it's been several hours since Mrs. Lam gave her speech. What has some of the reactions been like from the public?
Now, the bulk of her speech was about housing and land supply, where she spoke of measures to take back land, build more public housing and so on. So she briefly touched on education and economy, but didn't quite offer that many specifics, right? So I think it says a lot when even pro-government lawmakers expressed their disappointment in the speech because they were expecting her to be a leader. Now, one of the biggest pro-government groups, DAB's chairwoman Starry Lee, calls it conservative, procrastinating blueprint, saying there's a lack of concrete measures. Now, people want to know what plans and how Mrs. Lam is going to quell the unrest, but nothing was offered, says Lee. So Executive Council member Regina Ip says that it's natural Mrs. Lam was not able to address fundamental problems with Hong Kong's economic development, which is the erosion of competitiveness, because she has to handle the unrest. Meanwhile, Liberal Party welcomes some of the measures, but says more can be done to help smaller businesses. So if this is what the pro-government folks are saying, you can imagine and you can expect opposition lawmakers to basically tear apart her speech, and they're not going to be happy with it.
Right, I see. All right, thanks so much, Claire, for giving us some updates on the situation in Hong Kong. Of course, thanks again, Claire, for joining us. And do keep yourself safe while you report for us. Now, you can always head on down to our website if you would like to see more and keep abreast with all the latest developments in Hong Kong. So thanks once again, Claire. Now, moving on to our second story. Now, back home, 2 teenagers were among 4 people charged in court yesterday over their alleged involvement in sharing obscene materials in messaging app Telegram. Known as SG Nasi Lemak, the chat group shared obscene photos and videos of Singaporean girls. Screenshots circulated suggest that there were more than 44,000 members when it was still active. The chat group was set up more than a year ago, but its membership number spiked in recent months. Now, court correspondent Shafiq Al-Khatib is here to tell us more. Hi, Shafiq.
Hi, hello, David.
Hey, thanks for joining us on the show. Now, Shafiq, is this the first time individuals have been charged with transmitting, obscene materials through a messaging app?
Okay, at the top of my mind, there are two cases I can think of. Okay, not too long ago, there was a case of this man who was sent to jail for offences, including transmitting photographs of certain parts of his body. Let's just say that.
Right.
So he was sent to jail for offences, including that. And there's also this other case that I can think of where this group of about 5 men, I think, they were part of this forum called the Sammy Boy Forum. They basically got together, some of them or rather, took videos and images of women and girls inside places like public toilets and things like that, and it is shared online. So if I'm not mistaken, all 5 people linked to this Sammy Boy Forum have already been dealt with, and they were sent to jail. So at the top of my mind, these are the 2 cases that I can think of, which is quite similar to the SG Nasi Lemak case that I covered on yesterday.
Right. I mean, you mentioned a bit about pictures and videos in public toilets.
That's right.
Now, speaking of technology, tell us briefly how things have changed. It's the age of technology and smartphones. So how has things changed?
Okay, I've been doing court crime reporting for 10 years here, and I've noticed that since the introduction of smartphones, there has been an increase in cases involving technology, especially those, like upskirt pictures, images of people taking videos of images of people in toilets of both sexes, mind you.
Yeah.
Also with technology, we see people going on the internet, or predators going onto the internet to look for potential victims. So, well, what I believe is that technology, while it can help a lot of people with communication, with knowledge, to gather knowledge, to get to know people, I find that it can also be abused.
Yeah.
So I can safely say that it can be almost like a double-edged sword. So we need to be really careful when we deal with technology, especially when it comes to things like social media, smartphones, and other gadgets.
Right, that's a really good point. Now, SG Nasi Lemak, of course, might not be the only chat out there that might have such obscene materials. What should people do when they stumble across such chat groups?
Okay, the first thing when you stumble across such chat groups is do not enter, because from these cases, that it is an offense to transmit any obscene pictures. So, and I know that it is also an offense to even store or even have obscene pictures or images on your phone. So my advice is, please do not get yourself into unnecessary trouble. It's not worth it. So, if you do stumble across this, just log off. That's my advice for everyone out there.
Oh, thanks, Shafiq, for giving us that advice and for discussing a little bit more about this issue with us. If you'd like to see Shafiq's full story, you can always head on down to our website at straitstimes.com. Once again, thanks, Shafiq, for coming on the show. Now, moving on to our third and final segment, many people in Singapore have become used to sharing car rides and maybe workspaces with strangers. But what about homes? A growing number of businesses are betting on co-living, where occupants rent a room in a furnished apartment with common facilities shared with other tenants. There are currently at least 8 operators running co-living spaces in Singapore, including Live at Funan Mall, which is the largest in Asia. For a cool $150 per night, you could swap your boring old abode for a swanky new home. Would you? Now, journalist Michelle Ng spent 2 nights in a Live space and is here to tell us more. Hey, Michelle.
Hi.
Thanks for being on the show. Now, Michelle, maybe just tell us briefly, why is co-living getting so popular in Singapore?
Co-living is especially popular with millennials who want their own space, but yet they don't want to deal with the hassle of renting an apartment and having to furnish it all from scratch. So at co-living spaces such as Live Funan, the one that I stayed in, guests can just check in with luggage and you know, it's basically like a hotel where everything is provided for you, even down to the towels. And in Singapore, co-living is still quite a new concept, but operators here say that they're seeing a lot more interest from young Singaporean married couples. Perhaps they're waiting for their BTO to arrive, or like they just don't want to, in the meantime, they just don't want to live at home with their parents or their in-laws.
Now, in your story, you talk a bit about connecting through co-living. What are some of the features that help, facilitate this connection?
First, so at most co-living spaces, usually what greets you first is the lobby. So the lobby is generally is a huge space, and it's very Instagrammable, and that's where guests can hang out, do some work, like know their neighbors. So the one that I stayed in at Live at Funan, it also has a super huge like Connect 4 game board, and at Live there's also a shared kitchen that's relatively well stocked, and a gym.
Wow.
And a gym where there's a human-sized hamster wheel, which is quite an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess one of the biggest misconception about co-living is that you need to be really sociable and very extroverted to stay in there. But actually that's not true, because there's a good balance between shared and personal space. So if you want to like shut down and be alone, you can totally do that too.
Now, Michelle, you spent 2 nights over there. Now, come on, share with us, some of your personal favorites during your experience.
The weekend I stayed there, I joined a community cooking class. There were 4 other people in the class, so like 2 foreigners who are working in Singapore and another Singaporean couple. And that day we were making char kway teow, or at least some version of char kway teow. Yeah. and we had it for dinner together. So it was quite a nice experience to like make new friends.
Looks really good. Thanks for making us hungry on the show. Now, thanks, Michelle, for sharing with us your experience. I don't know how to cook, so I will definitely sign up for a cooking class. So once again, if you'd like to read Michelle's full story, you can head on down to our website at straitstimes.com. Now, those were the top stories of the day. For more news and videos, you can always head on down to our website. Now, once again, I'm Dylan, and thanks for tuning in. Join us tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.